not necessarily to come to kindergarten with all the skills that kindergarten was designed to teach in the first place. But some of the times, we get so caught up in education in terms of some of the things that we feel like we can measure, and we feel like that's the most important thing. The most important thing really for us to be teaching our children in the preschool program is how do you get along in a school-like setting?
Yeah.
How do you feel okay being away from mom and dad? How do you feel okay learning from and working with an adult that you haven't met before? How do you feel about sharing your resources and sharing adult attention with a bunch of other children when you may not have ever experienced being around a bunch of other children before? And it's easy to overlook that and think those are little tiny minor things, but when you're 3 and 4, those are big, huge things. And if you can master those then, it makes you so much more available for the learning that's going to happen in kindergarten. Yes, ma'am.
How available is CDS to a preschool and kindergarten? I'm looking at just an example of a friend who had her child in daycare and has a form of Asperger's. And the difficulty this child had, and almost got expelled, because he had problems with touch, and he had problems with, overstimulation, and it was his frustration that created the behavior. And once he was really evaluated and taken care of and found out what they could do to work with that, he was able to stay in the program. So how available in terms of even daycare is CDS for these people who are taking care of those children?
Okay, so acronyms vary by state. So when you say CDS,
Child Development Services.
Child Development Services, which
Which
is
is state
early intervention
yeah.
programs?
Preschool special ed.
Preschool special ed, got it, okay. Federally, we would call that Part B or Part C. Okay? We're calling that CDS. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of children who may come into our early care and education programs with some concerns that are really difficult for us to wrap our heads around. And we need a lot of support for those teachers to be able to effectively work with those children. And there are some children who may come into our programs who have some significant concerns, but they're not difficult concerns to deal with if only there were the right person made available to that teacher to be able to give that teacher the skills that they need in order to be able to succeed. And there is an awful lot of these children. An awful lot of children for which a little tiny bit of help would go a huge way, especially if we came in at just the right moment. If we come in at just the right moment, you can sometimes have just massive impacts. I'll tell you about I was planning on saying this later, but this is an engaging group. So I'm gonna jump into it right now. So I used to be a public school teacher before I got a changing career and ended up as a professor at Yale in the child psychiatry and child psychology department. But before that, I was a school teacher and for a while an early childhood mental health consultant, doing this kind of work in preschool classrooms. And there's been times that I've gone into preschool classrooms where the teacher, in this case a Head Start teacher, through this story that I'm thinking of, said that the biggest concern that she had was that the kids ran right down the middle of the classroom like it was a drag strip. And they would bump into each other, and some child would get hurt, and then all hell would break loose. And this was the description that she was giving me, and she wanted to know, well, what could we do to be able to help reduce that problem? Now, of course, when you're brought in as a consultant, the first thing you gotta do is you gotta listen very intently, and then the second thing you do is don't give the answer too fast. Because if you do, that's insulting, so you gotta struggle a little bit, So we struggled together, and then I asked her, I said, well, okay, so why is it that you have a drag strip in the middle of your classroom? And so we moved the first. How many people have been in a preschool classroom? Okay, so you know that in preschool classrooms, typically, we have bookshelves that are about this tall, right? Why is that? Because we ran out of material? No. The reason why is because we are taking advantage of a height differential that adults have over preschoolers. We can have furniture this big, and we can create smaller demarcated areas for children to interact in, and at the same time, the adults can supervise what's going on. And it tends to be movable. So if you move the furniture around, you can make smaller areas out of this big, huge room. Once you make the smaller areas out of this big, huge room, one, you don't have children crashing into each other, but two, now that there's smaller areas, what happens? The children start playing together and working together in smaller groups. What happens when they start working together in smaller groups? There's a greater likelihood of cooperative play, and they talk more. And the number one source of origin for words that a preschooler hears in a preschool classroom is not the teacher, it's the other children. And once you start moving the furniture around and you change things this way, some of the times you can impact the behaviors, and then some of the times you can have massive impacts on other things like language acquisition, simply because you move the furniture around. I'll tell you about another kid real quick, which was a child who was 3 years old, was in a preschool program, and I was brought in because the teacher, this lovely maternal grandmother, black woman, would sit in her chair and she would read to the children. And the children loved it. They would all stand and sit around her. And this one child, who's new, 3 years old, would crawl up into her lap during story time. She's reading the book, he's crawling up in her lap, and then he would look up sometimes and just look at her and then just kind of fall asleep. And sometimes he would look up at her and punch her in the face, hard, really hard. And she had no idea which one was coming. Where he was crawling. So she would sit there and he would crawl up in her lap and she would read her book. And she had no idea. And then so I was asked to come in. Now I met with mom and dad, and of course this was really concerning to them. They have no idea how to understand this. Why is this child doing this? And when you don't understand what's causing a problem, it's sometimes really easy to become very frustrated with the problem when you don't know where it's coming from. I met with the parents and found out that dad had only known this child for about 6 months. 6 months ago, the child's mother came to dad with a child that he had never seen before and said that she needed his help. It was an emergency. She had to go run an errand and she'll be right back. And she never came back. And this child was raised by a man and his new wife who was pregnant. Now, when you understand that part of the story, it's easy to understand that what we have here is a 3-year-old child who climbed up into this woman's lap, this woman who was very motherly, just the way she was, you know? And he climbed up in her lap, needing 2 different things. You know, sometimes he just needed to feel like he was near mom. And sometimes he just wanted to punch the hell out of her. You know, you have both of those, you know, and the times in our life when it's difficult for us as adults, and certainly difficult for babies, is not when we have strong emotions, it's when we have strong competing opposite emotions. Those are the real challenging times. And for this baby, when you know the story, the rest of it all makes sense. You know, sometimes it's challenging like this. Sometimes it's just moving furniture. You know, but anyway, I'll go back to where the next thing is going to go with the rest of this. Yes, sir.
Well, what I want to thank you for making the point drastically that preschool people need to be highly trained. And the other is, the program in Connecticut, is that a combination of federal Head Start funds and state Head Start funds?
Our state funded pre-K program?
Yeah.
So we have Connecticut is like Maine. We have, well, in some ways, not another way like that. We have a state-funded pre-K program where we have some federal dollars that come from CDBG, federal child care, and then we use those dollars, and then we add to it state funds, and then we create a unique state-funded pre-K program for children 3 to 4 years old.
Separate from Head Start?
And then we also have a state-funded Head Start program, and Maine is like that too. So you have a state-funded Head Start program, and you also have unique pre-K dollars.
Also, it's a state and federal Head Start program?
We have both of those different systems. They operate as different systems. Yeah.
And Maine's actually, some communities have a combination where, you know, local Head Start provider and the school combined.
Yes. Yes. And nationally, 17% of all Head Start communities are a public school. You know, so in those cases too, they just combine simply because that's the period. So progressing along, we did a study back in 2002, released the findings in 2005. Next click. Asked the teachers, in the past 12 months, have you ever required a child to terminate participation in your program because of challenging behavior? Don't include children who are transitioned directly from the preschool program to a potentially more appropriate setting, such as special ed preschool or something else like that. And so when we did this with state-funded pre-K programs, now this is not child care on the whole, this is pre-K programs that are supported by the state. So these are some of the better resource preschool programs, oftentimes working in the public schools. About 2/3 of these were actually pre-K programs in a public school. 10% of the teachers said, yes, that has happened in the past 12 months. Next click. Usually it was only one child if it did, sometimes two, next click, sometimes three, sometimes four children in the past 12 months. We piloted this before we went national in child care programs in Massachusetts. And when we piloted it in Massachusetts, we had one teacher of a child care program with 3 and 4 year olds together who reported expelling 6 children out of a class of 16 in the course of 12 months. That's almost half the class. You know, and when you see rates like that, it's a lot of kids. When you see rates like that, it's enough to make you think that it may not be just the child's behavior. There might be other factors that are actually at play here that could explain an epidemic of children being expelled from a program. Next click. We did the math. We knew how many children were enrolled in the program, so we could divide by the number of expulsions. This is the number of expulsions per 1,000 children enrolled nationwide in state-funded pre-K programs. So is that a lot? Is that a little? Or is that just like Baby Bear and just right? I mean, is that the number that you would expect? So we didn't have anything to compare it to, so we decided we would compare it to K through 12 expulsion rates. And so the K through 12 expulsion rate, next click, is this, which allowed us to be able to run with the headline of children being expelled from state-funded pre-K programs for 3 and 4 years old at a rate more than 3 times that of grades K through 12 combined.
Is that K-12
Yes.
in public schooling?
K through
Because there's a
12
big
public
difference between
schools.
public and private.
Yes, K through 12 public schools. It was from data collected from the Office of Civil Rights, U.S. Department of Education, supervising public, surveying public school superintendents. Yes, sir.
You have that data broken down by grade ranges like?
No, unfortunately, they never did. They broke it down based on race, based on ethnicity, based on gender, based on disability type, but they never broke it down by grade number. I wish they had, because it'd be great to be able to show. But my guess is, based on other research that we have available, that the expulsion rates tend to spike up around middle school, going into middle school, and then around 10th grade, they tend to taper back off because we push the kids out and we expel them. And so my guess is what you really would see is pre-K expulsion rates way up here, kindergarten down here, and then middle school, and then late high school.
That's what I would guess based on my experience.
Yeah, and in the preschool programs, the rates are crazy high, crazy high. Next slide. We could color code it by map. This is a color coded map that we put out in 2005. Helped us get lots of the attention. The states in red are the states that have the highest expulsion rate. And you,
Sorry, I'm moving around.
that's okay. And so there you are. Maine was number 2 in the nation in terms of rate of expelling children from preschool programs. You want to know? You want to know who's beating you?
Sure.
Alabama. That's a good guess because it is in red. Well, I should also say the ones that have no coloration, they have the lowest expulsion rate. Their expulsion rate is 0 because they don't have a state-funded pre-K program for which to expel. So their rates are 0.
That's the best solution, the easy solution.
Yes, I guess. New Mexico. New Mexico had the highest rate, but their program was itty-bitty, teeny-weeny program. It's an exceedingly small pre-K program, and so it's hard to know whether it's even maybe an anomaly. But other than that, this was the highest. Connecticut was 7th highest. Yes, sir.
So do you have any idea why we're treating our preschoolers so poorly?
You know, I've looked into I've looked into this as much as I can, and there's some things that are easy to research, and there's some things that are complicated to research. I think that the primary reason for this is that we expel children from preschool programs because we can. And when you're talking about children who are kindergarten and higher, these are children who are of compulsory school attendance age. They have to be in school. They have to be in school. They have to be at homeschool or something. And so, if the child is expelled at compulsory school attendance age, it creates a legal problem for the parents because their child's not in school. But when you're talking about preschoolers, these children are voluntarily attending a voluntarily offered program. They don't legally have to be there. And so when you're talking about compulsory school attendance age, it's a legal issue, so the process of expulsion is a legalized process. But when you're talking about preschoolers, it's not legalized. The process is the teacher sits down with the parent and says, I just don't think this is working out. That's the whole process.
So I understand that, but we still have a much higher rate than like the exclusive.
Oh, you mean why is it so high in Maine?
Yeah, why?
I was hoping you would tell me that.
I work with invertebrates.
Invertebrates?
Why would I fit you?